Nicholas Gibbs is here today. And Nicholas, the number one story, obviously, of the day we need to cover first because people are going to want to hear your opinion on this. I've given some opinion this morning. But let me start with Ashok's opinion on this because you posted it on your X. He said rather, insane. It's just so obviously unfair that I can only explain this as corruption. What did you think about the Delaware decision? I have probably some idea, but I'll let you tell it your own way.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of people have probably talked and said a lot of the same things that I think a lot of people are thinking the same things, right? And I think shock sentiment um, really extrapolates to all of us. I think the more interesting thing would be toofold. One, what happens from here? What do we do from here? Like, what is Tesla's process? How would they go about it? They'll obviously appeal in Delaware, but can it then be raised to the Supreme Court if even that fails? And what happens from there, right? Like, how does that really extrapolate? Like, will the Supreme Court even take it? Well, if they do take it, like, what does that mean, right? Like, I think we're in uncharted territory. So that's one thing, and I think we won't really know until after they appeal in Delaware, which they already said they're going to. So I think as far as what's next, you kind of put a pin in that. What's more interesting
So,
to me?
so,
Oh,
so
go ahead.
let me stop you for a second. There's one other alternative as there's appeal and then another appeal. And then there's, the idea of what we're going to do in Texas, et cetera. All those things are thrown out all the time. But as I was prepping the show, I realized there's another alternative. You can still have a settlement. I don't know that has any likelihood of
Yeah.
happening, but they could go back to the attorneys or the plaintiff and say, okay, we think that Elon's pay package should be this. Is that acceptable? And we think that you lawyers should be paid this. Is that acceptable? And have a settlement.
Yeah, I don't see that as one of the potential outcomes, personally. But you're right. I guess that could be it. I don't think it would suffice. I don't think it would be what everybody's looking for. Um, and even then, you would be essentially bending the knee. You would be saying, hey, this type of what I consider lawfare is okay, and I don't think it is. I think you got to fight for it, and you got to fight for what you think is right. And as Elon has eloquently said before, in person or in a post or something, even if the odds are that you're going to lose, you should still fight for what's right.
Right.
So I think that's what's going to happen here. So I think at this point there's still a lot of chess moves to be made,
Mhm.
but it's definitely an uphill battle because now we're working on appeals and we're working with you know a, a state that probably has a lot of political ill will to Elon Musk and everything that's happened. But we'll see. We'll see how this unfolds. And again, the ultimate uphill battle would be to have to go to the Supreme Court. And that would be even harder one because they have to choose to take it. And I don't think they've ever taken anything like this. This is, I think, a little unique, but again, even more reason potentially for it to be at the Supreme Court level. So, but I would say put a pin in that one because right now we can only theorize what happens from here.
Right.
What I found more interesting was the stock's reaction today.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was extremely telling. I thought it was telling for several reasons. One, because we don't anticipate Elon leaving, for
No.
one. So I think that's part of what held it up. Two, the fact that the attorneys only they got 345 million or something like that around that number as the compensation rather than it could have been 10%, right? So it could have been 5-6 billion, something like that.
Right.
Or hell, I mean, at this point, it could have been 10 billion, right? Because
Yeah.
it's gone up so much. But I think more importantly, it held up because there's confidence that with the allegiance that Elon now has and the political will, and that the overturn window has shifted, and I think there's a good chance that that's what's keeping the stock up. And like I'm telling you, 2 months ago, if this news would have came out, we would have been down 10-20% easy. Now I think you're starting to see that a lot of those bets that he had made are really paying off.
I tend to agree with you. In fact, I saw your post to that effect, and at the time I went, yeah, that makes sense that we've shifted in terms of the overall sentiment for the stock. The overall sentiment is that it's go, 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 and this is, if nothing else, probably not going to have a decision for 16 months, 18 months, if that. And there's so many, as you point out, things that can happen along the way that might change everything. So anyway, good. All right. Well, that I think is a good summary. And then I have this new idea today I want to throw by you. I have my checklist for the Robotaxi launch.
Let's hear it.
These are the 10 things that need to happen. Now, you may think of some others. That's kind of the reason to do it, right? Or you might think some of mine are dumb, but we'll take a look here. And also, where are we, in this process? So number one would be feature complete. Obviously, it must be able to do all the things that a Robotaxi needs to do. The V13, the version 13, added a whole bunch of features that the V12 didn't have. Are we there? Is that version 13? Yes, some things need to clean up, like the reverse and whatnot, but are all the features now in the car that need to be there to make it a taxi?
I think V13 will be feature complete. I'm not saying that everything's in there with the version that some people currently have, but V13 is the version I believe that will be feature complete.
Okay, so that'll solve number one. So we can check mark
Correct.
that as those come out over the next month or so. All right, number two, it has to be safe. I don't remember whether you and I talked about it, but I have my new standard for safe, and that is safer than Waymo. Now, of course,
Okay, then I think we checked that off already.
oh, we already checked that. Okay, so we're already safer than Waymo in your view, and that would mean
Well,
safer than Waymo in the city, but safer than Waymo on the freeways, safer than Waymo on a dirt road that it's never been on before. It's safer than Waymo wherever it goes.
I think it's safer than Waymo. Period.
Okay. All right.
I'll stop.
And,
I think today it's safer than Waymo.
all right. And I
and
can,
and that's and it doesn't even have a teleoperator, which Waymo doesn't either, but people say teleoperator, but there's no one sitting there watching or babysitting the cars either, and I would say it's safer than a Waymo despite
yeah,
that.
yeah, no, so Waymo does have teleoperator, not well, they have remote operators capable.
Yeah, everyone always gets this wrong.
Okay.
That's not how it works. It's no one's taking over the car. They will make suggestions to the car for it to try to figure out its situation.
Oh,
But if it doesn't work, that's when someone still has to
it's
go
the
out there and get into the front seat. If they had actual remote operators,
I
why
see.
would anyone even have to do that? Like,
Okay. I see. I can see your distinction there. Okay. I also believe that Tesla will still have restrictions. The restrictions might have to do with a ruddy tractor created road someplace, or it might have to do with the back half of Maui, where rental cars are not allowed to go. I think there'll be restrictions on weather and restrictions on impassable roads, things of that nature. But other than that, safer than Waymo wherever it goes. All right. Number three, remote operator capability, the kind we just talked about. So they're hiring for that position. So we're assuming that they'll put that person in place. Is that
so the job description that they have out is actually for someone to help build out a system for teleoperation,
okay?
right? Not for what Waymo has for actual teleoperation.
Oh,
And
actual teleoperation. Oh,
well, that I mean, that's what it sounds like based on description. And they make a huge note on the latency factor, which is what I've been stressing about. So I imagine that there's a lot of it's a huge networking challenge. It's a huge latency challenge. It's a huge it's just a huge problem to solve. I think it's not undoable, or it's not like impossible, but it's definitely going to be a big challenge. But I think the bigger thing is they are adding these people in as a emergency exit door. but they don't need that door to let people in, right? They still have the front doors, they have the normal back doors, they have the side entrance, but they also are adding this emergency exit door afterwards. Whereas I feel like Waymo is essentially telling people to come in through the emergency exit door
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
start off, right? So we're adding this as a layer of safety after we've solved the problem. We're
Right,
adding this layer of safety because things are going to happen.
right,
There's going to be false alarms, whatever. So I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic, but yeah, I think that's more so what they're gearing towards, and it'll be a lot more vehicles to one individual ratio than what you see with Waymo
right.
because they're doing it the right way.
Okay, all right. I think they'll have some ability for the writer to command through the app or display, preferably Grok, but it could just be talking to a simpler computer. So I think that needs to be completed. That hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, and that's I imagine that's exactly what will happen. They might still call it Grok, or they might make their own LM internally. It might be a lightweight version of Grok. Who knows what they end up doing, but it will be a I think much less the aperture for what you can say and interact with it will be much smaller because really again it comes back down to like first principles. There's not a lot of stuff, like it doesn't need to know who the king of England was in 1215, right?
Right,
That's not necessary information, that's a waste of compute.
right,
But it needs to be able to say understand where you say, hey, pull over next to the red car on the right,
right,
or hey, this is fine here, or hey, actually, can you just take a left up here instead of taking that right? Like little things like that.
right,
You don't
right.
need to. Which again, that the aperture for that is way more narrow, and so I think that makes it where it can be a lot more accurate as far as the LLM goes, and it would take a lot less compute.
Okay, all right. Then we got regulators. Okay, we have China, we have the EU, we've got the US, and we've got the UN. These apparently are going to be the only four, well, possibly California, but not counting California. These are the four regulatory bodies that are studying, thinking about getting in the process of potentially coming out with regulations, rules, etc. And all four of them are on track to do it soon, from what we've heard. Um, California too, I guess, is on track to do it soon. We're we're assuming about the U.S. because of the new administration saying that it's going to be a high priority, not necessarily because the current administration has any desire or interest in creating the procedures or whatever. But and then within that, it's interesting to me that they're going to have to rely on each company's data because none of these regulatory agencies have any way to generate their own independent data. So when it comes to the miles between disengagements or miles between accidents or whatever, they're just going to have to rely on the company data that's provided.
I mean, that's how it's done already, anyways, right? Like, I mean, NHTSA and all them, they rely on insurance companies to give them metrics for crashes and accidents. Even us, we self-report our taxes,
Mhm.
right? So a lot of government relies on people self-reporting and just hoping that people do the right thing. And if not, and there's a random sampling of checking that you found you're doing something wrong, well, that's when you get caught red-handed. So I think that's pretty normal. I do think that's maybe the way it should be early on, but there should be some type of standard of what the data needs to consist of,
Mm.
and that should be a homogenous standard
Mhm.
across the board, and it should obviously be held to the highest degree of scrutiny. So let's say that Waymo has or provides more data, better data, more nuanced data, then Tesla should have to meet Waymo's standard, right? We should default to the higher standard, not to the lesser standard.
Okay. All right. And so, but all four of those seem as if they could all be in place by mid-year. And so it's not going to be, doesn't look like it's going to be a holdup. I mean, obviously, a lot of things going to happen.
I think, yeah, I think it'll start off in the States, obviously. And then I think China will be a relatively quick follow. As long as I think China will be a quick follow in concert with some Chinese vendors. I don't think, I think I think this is kind of the sticky point in China is that Tesla won't be able to wall garden this, and they'll have to probably come in with other partners,
Mm.
hence Geely or whoever they end up licensing this to, and then they can also have their own. But it can't be where it's just Tesla, only Tesla, and they don't come in with someone else. I could see that being kind of a thing.
Okay. All right. Number 6 would be Tesla's willingness to accept liability for accidents caused by FD or negligently allowed by the failure of FSD. So that would be a requirement that I think is obvious, and it would just be a matter of saying, yeah, well, duh.
That one's the hard one in the United States because insurance is done on a state by state basis. So I'm not sure how that gets covered. I don't know if there's a national policy you can. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
So I think that one will be more complicated.
Well, Tesla can self-insure for their own purposes, for the corporate purposes. They're all there. It's kind of like an umbrella. So I could still cover when I go out on when I put my cars out on what do you call it? The rental thing. Turo.
True.
When I put my cars out on Turo, they have a umbrella policy, and then I can still have a policy as well. In fact, they encourage you to have your own policy.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're saying Tesla can self-insure out of Texas, and then all their vehicles or any vehicle that's in operation as FSD would fall under the Texas insurance policy, is what you're saying?
Or there again, it could be self-insured. It could be they might have to have some kind of a co-insurance or whatever, but whatever it is, it's going to be covered by them the same way that Turo currently covers the owners and the passengers on their policy.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, then that sounds like it's not a big issue
Okay.
if that's how it plays out. Yeah, that's great.
Obviously, the app and the infrastructure around the app would have to be in place, and I think that's probably an easy, maybe one of the easier things, and probably maybe already done.
Yeah, I think that's done already.
Okay, all right. Then we've got the method for charging up the vehicles at the charging stations. I've been thinking about this a lot the last few days, and I've come up with a very simple solution. Optimus.
Sure.
I mean, it's a pretty easy job for Optimus to do. I mean, we're talking about a pick and place. It's not a hard job. It seems to me they could put Optimus out there tomorrow, as good as Optimus is now.
Yeah, but you probably wouldn't want to do that out the gate because you don't want anyone messing with it. You don't want anyone trying to steal the Optimus. Like there's
I think you could teach it Krav Maga.
yeah.
And then let everybody know. Optimus can go, I know Krav Maga. Keep your hands off of me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it starts there, Randy. Self-defense. And then next thing you know, the whole world. No, I think to start off with like the threes and whys, there's lots of easy answers to this. I mean, you could literally have someone, you could pay someone just like an Airbnb, right? You can Airbnb your place and you can have someone take a cut of your, you can have someone take a cut of your revenue, your earnings, and they will go and they'll change the sheets and clean the place and do all that for you. And you don't have to do any of it. So I could see something like that where there are people who will be designated to different charging stations. And anytime you go charge there, hey, they get a cut of whatever, and you could choose to use that or not. And if not, then you can just have it come back to your house and you can charge at your house.
Yeah, I was also thinking the other way around too, is that Tesla could, because they have the data, it would be easy for them to figure out. They could start opening up certain of the stations or putting a person on location at the very largest stations at first.
Yeah.
And then if they needed them, you could put one out here because then the amount of money involved is going to be so small compared to the amount of money that the system is going to bring in. But ultimately, I think it should be Optimus. I mean, it's going to be good to expose Optimus out there in these opportunities, and people get to see it and whatnot. All right, then Tesla will also need oversight of the owners in terms of cleanliness and roadworthiness, etc., just like Turo does, just like Waymo and Lyft do. So there has to be some kind of an oversight system to make sure the cars are clean, make sure they're roadworthy, etc.
Yeah, I think it should work both ways. If you have your vehicle going out and it is not in good condition, it's not clean, all that, then that affects your earnings. And vice versa. If you leave a mess in the car, if you do any damage to the car, that's going to be reflected on your charge on the ride, right? So you should have this mutually um, beneficial situation where, as a rider, I keep my low cost, my low fare by doing the right thing, just sitting there, taking a ride, not leaving my trash behind, not making a mess, not throwing up in the car, whatever. If that happens, hey, vomit has a fee, trash has a fee, breaking something has a fee, right? Like this is pretty basic. And me as an owner, if I send it out, gross, not washed, whatever, that has a fee.
All right. Okay. And then last on my list is service, security, and emergency. Okay. A fleet. There's going to need to be a fleet that takes care of breakdowns, security problems, emergencies. Somebody gets really sick in the car, whatever. I don't mean just throwing up from being a drunk. I mean, they're really sick. Yeah, there needs, and of course, Tesla has a fleet out of their service centers that's out there. But I don't know. I think there's going to maybe they need to get together with Auto Club or some of these others to be able to make sure that they can have somebody there to take care of things quickly. I'm sure Waymo must be doing something about that.
Well, I think that's partly. I mean, I think they have everything in place for that, right? Like, if there's a real health issue, all right, that's what an ambulance is for. If there's a real safety issue, okay, that's what 911's for. If there's like, hey, I got a flat tire, well, then you would think within the UI, it's like, hey, just had a flat tire, need another Robotaxi, and one gets sent to your location. In the meantime, Tesla Service Center can come out and swap a tire out, right? So I think they have the infrastructure already built in for that. And I think, to your point, there's Tesla chapters and communities all across the country, all across the world. And I think those could also be leveraged as a support thing. I think those will probably be like, where are the biggest chapters? That could also be a place where you start with Model 3 and Y robotaxis. Because, hey, here's where, I mean, yeah, they have all the data. I think there's answers to all these problems right now, and
All
that's
right.
just what I'm thinking of in 2 seconds. Imagine if I actually sat down a solid 5 minutes into this problem. Like, what do you come up with?
Yeah. Okay. So, that was my list. Did anything occur to you while I was going through it that I didn't cover?
I'm thinking.
Apparently, I could see the smoke.
I think the biggest things like with the 3 and Y would be the steering wheel itself. Making sure that there needs to be a way to make sure that somebody goofing off can't just take it over.
I see. So it's got to
Right.
be engaged while it's a robotaxi.
Yeah.
So that should be
Yeah.
electronically, right? He disengaged electronically, I think.
Well, the problem, if it was a Cybertruck, I could,
Oh,
but it's attached to the wheels, right? The whole column.
yeah.
Um, but that's where I'm a big fan of removing the steering wheel
I
and
see.
removing the pedals just completely. All right. I mean,
But
they've
then you
talked about
don't
this
have
for a long time.
oh, I see. So then when you're using it for your own purposes, when it's at home and you don't have it out as a road taxi, you would just be like your own customer in the car, taking you where you want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's an idea. Hadn't thought of that one. See, that's why we have you on here.
What else? What else could I think of? Probably. I don't know. I mean, I
Yeah, I
I
guess
can't think of any problems that don't have quick answers to.
yeah.
Right? The thing, not problem. The thing is, we've had taxis for so long, we've had Uber and Lyft for so
Right.
long
Right.
that a lot of these problems have already been solved. That you
Sure.
don't really have to recreate the wheel.
Right. Right. So to speak. On another subject,
Pun intended.
on another subject, quoting you, you say that Tesla underscore AI, Tesla dot A, whatever you want to call it, is the only AI company for the next 5 years. LLM hype cycle is coming to an end. And the ROI expected isn't going to be in LLMs, and that seems clear for now. And my question to you is, A, that's interesting. Talk to me about that. But also, what about Grok with the advantage of X content and real world data from Tesla? Will Grok potentially be the one that keeps the hype going?
No. Um, so look, here's the thing with LLMs. They are a lot of fun, and they were the first breakthrough that the masses had into anything AI. Right? It was the first time that they had something that felt human to them.
Mhm.
Right? First time. The problem with LLMs from a business point of view, a revenue point of view, is that they have a huge sunk cost requirement. They are they require a lot of, it's very expensive to have the upkeep. Um, and there's so many of them. It's so prevalent, right? Like there are just so many LLMs out there now. Everybody has an LLM, right? It's we're not in a shortage of LLMs. You can find anything. Are some better than others? Yeah, sure. Is it at this point really substantial to a point where you're like, oh man, I'm only going with this one, not that one? No, they're not. They seem to all be um, uh, getting to this focal point where they're all essentially indistinguishable from each other. Um, are there some nuances? Yeah, sure, right. If you use Gemini with Google, that's a little different. If you use Grok with XAI, yeah, that's a little different. Yeah, it's a little more real time. But what are people going to pay for it? Is the value I get from it something I'm really willing to pay for when I can have another one that's essentially the exact same? The honest truth is no, it's not. So so what will happen, and I have a fairly high degree of certainty on this, LLMs will become the new just kind of building block for what the next thing is going to be, or the LLMs will be part of the next building block, right? So for example, remember, I posted, been talking about this all throughout 2023,
I know.
and it was not popular to say what I was saying. And I got tired of it. So I was like, I'm just going to pin this here and it'll stand the test of time. And I think as we're getting into the end of 2024 here into 2025, I think there'd be unanimous agreement that this is accurate as of this point in time. So what happens? Where's the innovation? Where's AI actually going to create revenue? Well, it's going to be wherever we're solving really hard problems. And this is where FSD comes in with Tesla AI, where they're solving an extremely hard problem that everybody can't just automatically do because the data is so hard to get. The infrastructure needed is so complicated. The technical team is very difficult. You need to have the fleet, right? There's so many moats in place that it makes it very difficult. And it is actually an AI project. So are LLMs, but guess what? Everybody can quickly, easily do that. Randy, you could do it right now on your laptop if you want to. You could build your own LLM.
Hmm.
It's at this point, it's a really not trivial, but it's everyone knows how to do it now. Now it's just about tweaking it. Whereas FSD, that's not the case. Optimus, that's not the case. These very novel problems are really hard to get into that you can't just do it from your house.
Yeah.
So that to me is the very obvious place where it's going to go to. And the other thing is the value you get from LLMs, while it's great, makes you very productive, takes some of the menial tasks out of your day to day, makes writing
Mhm.
emails easier. I can ask it. It makes me faster than searching on Google, having to find a link, doing a little reading. It kind of right. It short circuits that time, but it doesn't replace the need for me as a human. I
Yeah.
still need to go in there and ask a question, whatever. With FSD, I don't have to do any of the driving. I don't even have to think. I could go to sleep, right? With Optimus, right? The vision. I could have it go do something that I don't have to do. It takes me out of the equation.
Right.
And that's where what you're paying for. That's the value. Now, going back to full circle, when I say the LLMs will either be the building block or be part of the building block, that goes back to what we're talking about with Tesla and robotaxis. Whatever LLM is in there, if Tesla has to license that because it needs to be a certain level, or if eventually it's not just this bare bones LLM that can just be like, hey, take a left here, or hey, stop right here, but it can be something where like, hey, find me the X best restaurants, whatever. You make me a reservation. Right now, we're talking about more complicated things. And at that point, I imagine Tesla will license or pay a license fee to XAI so that they can reach out to the cloud, have the bigger models there. Like, hey, if they're asking for a restaurant to XYZ, right? We can have more latency in the system for that. Why? Well, because we don't need to know what restaurants are nearby with a 5 star that have my certain dietary requirement and is also within walking distance to the theater because I have to show right after, right? Stuff like that. It's not so latency sensitive. That's life or death,
Right.
right? So that's where I can see the intersection start to happen, where LLMs start to add value. Short of you being additive to a real AI problem that's really hard and makes real revenue, and you're not adding to it,
Right.
it's I don't know how this is in my mind. It's clear. It's like you've got the core real revenue generating AI problem that is being solved, and that's really what makes the money.
Yeah.
If you can attach yourself to that and be additive and good enough that you're one of the only ones that are doing that, you're going to win.
Okay,
And
so
I think that's
let's take a practical example that everybody understands and which has already been talked about a lot, so that we can maybe better understand it outside the context of Tesla. And that is, people are saying that the current LLMs are better at diagnosing illnesses than a doctor. 94% of the time they get a better diagnosis, something, I forget what the numbers are. So you're taking
but
theoretically, you can take the doctor out of the situation.
can you?
Well, so that becomes the issue. So I see it, I've been seeing it one way. I've been seeing it that the doctor might be obligated to ask the LLM after he's made his diagnosis. So I think
The,
this is what it is. Now I'm going to have to ask the LLM in order to get that confirmation, because otherwise it's malpractice.
the doctor should be there to be the person that knows the right questions to ask,
Mhm.
right? It's not just about, hey, LM, can you give me the right answer? Can I, looking at you, seeing your symptoms, hey, I notice your eyes are a little yellow, your shortness of breath, whatever. I think you're jaundice. Okay, this could be something going on here. I can ask you the right follow-up questions. I know how to phrase certain things. I Maybe I can tell like you're kind of not telling the truth. Are you scared to get in trouble because your parents are standing right here, right? Like all that stuff is really important, and you still need that human connection. You need that human being in that loop, but the doctor doesn't now have to have every answer at the top of his head or her head, right? They could literally just annotate what do they see, how are they thinking about it, leverage AI to help them, right? Just like an email. I know how I want to reply. I can leverage an LLM to help me write my response back, but then I sit there and I tweak it. And I'm like, well, no, don't say this because they don't like that. And well, they like being a little more direct, like you still need a human in there, is my point.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So you can't get them out. What I would say, like a really good example I'm talking about where LLMs will find their value is look at Tesla right now with and XAI. They're building out these massive data centers, right? Massive data centers.
Right, right.
Well, within these data centers, the only thing that is truly required that can't be replaced right now is NVIDIA's GPUs. Now, those GPUs have to sit somewhere. A lot of Dell servers are used. A lot of super micro servers are used. A lot of HP servers are used. But here's the truth: those companies aren't really necessary. They don't really provide any true value. They are all essentially the same bent sheet metal. They really are. NVIDIA, you can't just go with anything else.
Mhm.
I could literally take NVIDIA, I could put it in Supermicro, I could put it into HP, Dell, Lenovo, Fujitsu. I mean, I could go on and on. I could literally put it into any of these servers. So that becomes kind of the LLM. The question is, who does Tesla choose to align with? Well, it seems like Tesla has chosen to align a lot with Dell. Okay, so well, now Dell gets that contract. Sucks for everyone else, right? Batteries, same kind of thing. Everybody knows how to make batteries now. That's not really an issue. Who does Tesla choose to align with? Whatever battery provider Tesla's chosen to align with, they're winning. Everyone else is losing, right? And that's how LLMs I think will be. Whoever is solving the real AI problem, whether it's Optimus, whether it's driving, whether it's doing surgeries, whatever, whoever those companies that are solving the real problem choose to add, whether it's the batteries, whether it's the
Right.
server,
Right.
those will be the ones that are winners. So it's going to be additive. It's going to be something you have to have, but it's going to be so ubiquitous. It's going to be so bare bones. There's not going to be any real uniqueness to it in the next 5 years. That's how I see it.
Hmm.
There could be breakthroughs. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
ever changing. I just think LLMs is such a small domain that it's not going to be the thing that really creates AGI. AGI encompasses all domains, not just text in, text out, not just hearing words and reciting words back. That's a
Mhm.
very simple domain. That's not even 2D,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's such a surface level um, problem that we're quickly making it ubiquitous that it becomes just again like a sheet of plywood. Nothing too special, but I need that sheet of plywood to build the house, but I can
Right.
choose any sheet of plywood.
Right. 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 All right. Very interesting. So, but once again, Mr. Musk seems to be in control of the future in a very in a very substantial way by being embodied with something that really takes advantage of the concept and at the same time building maybe one of the best LLMs in the world simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, he's got two big problems, right? He's got Optimus and he's got self driving.
Yep.
And those are really big problems that will be solved. Now, I don't want to just make it sound like what XAI is doing or OpenAI is just trivial. Like, there is a lot of, I don't know firsthand, but I imagine a lot of really amazing breakthroughs and ideas and a lot of great things happening in those companies. But I think XAI, and I think they will all eventually have like their little tweak about what makes them special.
Mhm.
It's like if I go to, Ruth Steakhouse versus I don't know some other steakhouse, uh, or Ruth Chris, versus some other steakhouse. Like, okay, well, Ruth Chris is known for butter on the steak and making it extremely hot, and right, like their way of cooking it, like it's what they're known for. But at the end of the day, it's a steak. It's a good steak, but it's a steak. I go another place and they have their little bend to it. And I think that's what you'll see with LLMs. Right now, I do think OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Anthropic are better than Grok
Mhm.
in many ways, but Grok is better in real time, up to date
Mhm.
ability because, to your
Right.
point, the feed from X and that could over time propel it to find new breakthroughs or even if it never gets to be as good as ChatGPT or Anthropic because they're both, everyone's moving up
Right.
and it becomes hard to lead people when everyone's kind of running at the same pace. Even if that never happens, it might be that Grok is more valuable because of that real time nature, right? So it'll come back down to just what's your bend? What are you looking for? Do you want that extra hot steak, grilled, get that extra char, or do you prefer, this wagyu steak that I can't
Right.
get everywhere, right? Like it's gonna be what flavor you're looking for, what suits your needs. But I really think that at the end of the day, it's all steak. Like
Well,
a steak's a steak.
speaking of Ruth Chris, I had both the best steak I've ever had at Ruth Chris on La Cienega in West Los Angeles and the worst steak I think I've ever had in a restaurant at Ruth Chris in Maui. Even sent it back and they sent me another one and it was still lousy. So
Mm.
that's my story with Ruth Chris.
All right, all right. Just not to go on too much of a tangent here. So I love steakhouses.
Okay.
Um, Hands down, I think the best steakhouse is Peter Luger's. There's two, one Long Island and one in Brooklyn or Queens. I forget. Best, literally all these steak restaurants are copying what Peter Luger's did.
I see. Okay.
I think tied for second, or no, second would be in Charleston, South Carolina, called Hall's Steakhouse. Fantastic. And then I think in the third echelon, to me, I think Ruth Chris actually, when they're good, make a really good steak. I have had one bad experience,
Oh, isn't that interesting?
and it's only one, and I sent it back. Well, I didn't type sent back. I just told him, it's like, listen, I come here with my wife. We come here pretty frequently because it is a good steakhouse, and we want steak. But this is the first time I've ever had a bad steak here. And I'm not saying I'm asking you to take it back. He's like, "Oh, we'll take it back." I'm like, "No, that's not what I'm asking. I don't want you guys to shut down because nobody tells you this feedback, and then next no one comes and rent's expensive here because rent's really expensive where they're at, and then all of a sudden there goes the business. So I'm just giving this feedback because I don't want you guys to go away." And he said, "Don't even worry about it." And they brought me a whole nother steak, gave us dessert, comped everything. Took me about 2 months before I went back there again because I was like, I don't know, I just don't want to waste money, and haven't had a problem since.
That's
But I just it's it's not a cheap place to go eat,
right.
and so when you go there, you expect a certain standard, and it really puts a bad, no pun intended, taste in your mouth if you don't get what you expected. So yeah, just at least shout out to them for. I mean, it sounds like you had a similar thing, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate when a restaurant will do right
That's
and
right.
not try to pinch a penny.
Well, I don't know if your travels have ever taken you to Kansas City, but of course, Kansas City claims to have the best steaks in the world. I've been eating a few steaks in Kansas City. I have yet to top that Ruth Chris, but Kansas City, being in the center of the old cattle country, they at least claim corn fed. Anyway, but that's it. Maybe.
Yeah, I have a business meeting tomorrow with some of my investment peers where we meet every month at we bop around different places, but there's this steakhouse that's literally been like maybe like 2 blocks away from one of my houses here downtown St. Pete. And I've never been to it. As much as I love steakhouse, I've never been to it. So we're gonna go there for the first time tomorrow evening. And supposedly, I've heard this nonstop that supposedly it's the best steak in the Tampa Bay area. And if you know the Tampa Bay area, you know that Burns Steakhouse is
Rap.
it's got its it's like 3 months waiting line just to get in there.
Wow.
It's it's known as like one of the best steak restaurants in the United States. So I'm really excited to check this place out because that's a bold claim.
Okay, so after that
So
long tangent, we we
hey, you know how Jason and 𝐬𝐤𝐚𝐽𝐸 give us Sax's red meat? You just gave me my red meat.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, instead of wine or desserts or fruits, yeah, special picking seasons for grapes. All right, the discussion on this has died down on X now, but you were in a pretty hot discussion the other day. So I believe that the Model 2.5 the affordable vehicle will be a modified Model 3 and or Model Y with substantial body changes and maybe along the lines of the Mexico version in terms of creature comforts. I didn't really look at your guys' debate to see who came out where. I kind of saw a couple of other places where people were, making some remarks, but where did you come out? Where are you on the Model 2.5? Because you were adamant that you knew what was going on.
Oh, it's very simple. The people who think that it's just gonna be the cyber cab with the steering wheel and pedals are wrong, and the 3 and Y theory you had is more correct.
All
That
right.
it's
Is there an
it,
add? Is there something you want to add to my theory? I won't be embarrassed.
uh no, I think that's it. I mean, it's literally gonna be built on the same lines.
Right.
So I don't think it's gonna look like the 3 or Y, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, the body you can make it whatever you want to look like,
Right.
but it'll be built on the same lines. And I imagine a lot of the side pieces or whatever will, um, they'll be, from the unbox method where they can fit it, they'll fit it.
Mhm.
But I think the line will still be the line,
Mhm.
and that's it. I mean, like I
Okay.
think it's pretty
All right.
straightforward. I'm sure that the battery and the floor will be one and the same. I'm sure you'll, put it's going to be literally the 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 step before you get to completely unbox. Like I
Right. Okay.
it I
Good.
don't, to me it
Okay.
seems pretty obvious. Like
Yeah,
I
me
don't I
too.
don't know. Here's how I look at it. You can think that it's not what we're saying and choose to think that they're just going to add a steering wheel and pedals to the cyber cab and maybe you add another layer of seating. But people who are saying that are making up their own theory and come up with their own ideas. What I'm doing is listening to the words that they told me and repeating it back right now.
Right. Right.
That's all I'm doing. I'm
Exactly.
repeating what they said.
That has been
So,
the formula for the books. That has been the formula for the show. It's always
yeah,
what did Elon and or the other executives say, and then from there, yeah, I'm going to speculate, but I'm going to always use that as the root
you know,
of whatever that we say on the channel.
yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be right.
Right,
But
right, right. Yes.
if you ask me to put money on it, that's where I would put my money. I would say that it's more 3Y than it is Cybercab.
Right, right.
Like it just seems pretty, I don't know, seems pretty coherent,
That's right.
logical.
That's right. So the markets today were crazy flat. The JOLTS data was slightly bullish. The
What,
market is,
what was it? What was it? I missed it. I completely missed it.
well,
I
it depends on who you read. I always look at the JOLTS data in the original. I go to the JOLTS page and read it. To me, the JOLTS people said it's flat, it's flat, it's flat. There was not very much change. There was a little bit more quits. There was a little bit fewer layoffs. There was a few more jobs available, maybe 100,000 more jobs, maybe 200,000, I forget, maybe from 7.1 to 7.4 to 7.7 or something. Anyway, it was not very significant. Then you look at some of the reporting on it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, it was a great jobs report." And I'm like, "What?" So, um, but even their own reporting was not a significant change.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's a nothing burger,
Right.
which
Right.
is good for rate cut. So
Right. Right. And the rate cut percentage right now, I think, is a 68. But I started saying a week and a half ago, maybe I even said it to you, that I thought that the market would be less interested. That when we're down now under 5%, we're down to 4.75, right? No, 4.5 to 4.75 as far as the Fed rate is
oh,
concerned. That it's really doesn't matter a lot now. I'm sure it's going to be stimulative to a certain degree to come down another quarter. But whether it happens now or January, I don't think it matters at all. But the market seemed today to be saying, okay, we're going to wait.
well, so I agree with you. I don't think 1 month makes a difference. I do think we need to keep cutting, though. I'm of the opinion that we are still pretty restrictive, and I, I don't think you can have it both ways. I don't think you can have it where you're constantly saying that, well, it takes time for these rate cuts to work through the system and all that, and then not also understand that, okay, I've made these rate cuts, we've been overly restrictive, we're still restrictive, and that's not still having effects throughout the system being
Right,
restrictive.
right.
Like that, it must be right.
Mhm.
So unless this is neutral and we just don't know it, that could be the case. But I don't think this is neutral. I think we are contracting still, and I think it'll start to make itself probably a little more apparent Q1 of next year, for better or worse. But I think to keep, I think they're doing the right thing. I
Okay.
think cutting slowly 25 bases. We don't need to rock the boat. Maybe they skip a meeting after they cut in December. I think they will. I think it's February is the next meeting
No,
after
it's like
December.
I looked it up. It's actually like the very end of January. It's like January
Okay,
29th or I don't remember exactly, but it's
but
still
that's
in.
perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll have so much data that comes out between now and then.
Right.
The only thing is it true data? That's the question. And I don't mean to say that because they're constantly revising. I mean to say that because at the beginning of the year, like
Oh,
those first 3 months are questionable
I
because
see.
they're constantly reconfiguring how, right, they'll put in new ways
Right.
that they're calculating certain
Right.
things. And now we're comparing against last year, but it's not really the same. It's not apples to apples because they made tweaks. You have
Yeah.
that every
Well,
year,
if
and it's
they're
annoying.
if they're less quality than they've been, that's really bad. Because man,
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'm hoping that maybe Doge will have that as one of the responsibility is to get the data quality up. Holy mackerel. You got
I,
400 PhDs at the Fed. 400 economic PhDs, not just masters, PhD economists. And you can't get the numbers right?
Hey, I can't believe we need any of them, right? Like this
That's,
should all be tracked live. It should be completely live. We can track what 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 Microsoft, what Nvidia, what Apple are worth on a second by second basis. What's happening to the market, but we can't track food, bread, the cost of bread. We can't keep up with that. We can't figure out. Hey, somebody just got hired. Look. We see market values go up and down tens of billions of dollars in seconds.
right,
It takes a long time for someone to get hired or be fired. There's
right.
like a taxable track record
Yes.
on that. This should be so easy to keep track of and make it accurate.
It
Like I don't know why this is so hard.
makes a person nuts just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the market today, we had Tesla down $5.67, but it's up 73 cents in the after hours. And by the way, it had been down a lot more, but the last 15 minutes, there was huge activity and it popped a couple of bucks at the very end. So I think people figured it out. They're like, this is as we've talked about, a nothing burger. So let's get on with our day and make something happen here.
Let,
Uh
let
yeah,
me just real
yeah,
quick put a
yeah,
little contrarian.
yeah.
The market likes to make people look stupid.
Ah, yes.
So just be careful. Tomorrow or the next day might be the actual reaction to this.
Oh,
It may not have been today.
yeah, yeah.
Um, just think about whenever we have earnings or something big happens with Tesla. Sometimes it takes a few days before we actually start to see the market price it in. A lot of times, the market, hedge funds, day traders, algos, market makers, they will let retail make the stupid moves before they come in.
In your experience, and you've been doing this a long time, if the market believes, if the market starts to believe that Robotaxi will happen in July, how far ahead of that? I mean, I know I've been always taught that the market wants to be 6 months out, that they want to predict, 6 months or so out. But in a case like that, where there's a big breakthrough coming and the breakthrough, has some legitimate reasons why it's going to take X or Y or amount of time to happen. So you can kind of say, like, let's say the Blackwell chip, Blackwell, yeah, Blackwell chip pretty much knew when it was coming out, and so there was some backing off and whatnot because there was a 2 week delay. But what does is it going to be the week before Robotaxi gets announced before the market really starts to go FOMO, or could we, or does it happen 6 months out?
Okay, so there's a few different ways to think about this. I'll tell you how I think about how I look at it. I'm of the opinion that the market knows everything that you know. You're never going to have an edge on the market, is my opinion. The second that the second that you know that's going to happen, that you as an individual, as an investor, it's too late. The market will have already priced it in. The market have already factored it in. The market doesn't know less than you do. If anything, the market knows more than you do. That's how I see it. So I don't think you can get a 6 month edge. I don't think you can do any of these things. I think all you can do is see what the technology is and choose to invest in it. A perfect example. All right. We all believe in this story, this vision of Tesla, right? People believe in this vision story of Bitcoin, right? You got all these companies that people believe in the fundamental technology and story. But weird how it's been years and these companies or Bitcoin or whatever haven't manifested what everybody thought it would 3-4 years ago, right? It's weird. It's as if you could have just listened to the market the whole time and put your money elsewhere and actually made more money. But the question is, when those moves happen, it's too late because the market knows you don't, or you know at the same time, right? That's the problem. And the other thing is the market also likes to play games, right? Like you don't know what the market's waiting for. For example, 10-10. Everybody's like, "Oh, what's going on? Why didn't anything happen?" Right? You didn't know that the market was waiting for earnings to come out, but that is what it was waiting for. And then we saw the move, but we didn't see that big of a move. And then here comes the election. Well, I think everybody could have predicted that if Trump won, that certain things would happen, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't have predicted the size or when or how or the magnitude or how many days, but the market did, right? The market knew you're never going to be able to get ahead of the market. That's why buy and hold makes so much sense. And that's why, in my opinion, selling options versus buying options makes so much sense. Because when you sell options, you're not predicting direction. You're not predicting up, down, neutral. If you sell options, you're just predicting that it won't go here and it won't go here by this time.
Right.
Anything in between that is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you buy options, you're saying it's going to move in this direction
In
and it
that
has to do it by this time. That's very hard to play. So to me, buy and hold, sell options.
Gotcha.
That's the game. You're not going to get rich overnight doing that, but you're not going to get burnt. It's consistent, and you don't have to be right about time or direction. And that's what I love about it. So long way to answer your question, but I think the market is efficient, and I don't think you will ever know something before the market does.
Okay, interesting. Well, we may have to have a longer debate on that in the future.
We can. I have lots of examples I can show you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sure that you can give me lots of examples. I think briefly, because we do have to get off. Briefly, the channel is based on the idea that information is valuable. And the more information that you have about something, the better you are able to arbitrage that information potentially into something good for yourself. So to the extent that you are paying attention to things, well, we've just seen so many examples over the last couple of days of people, bears who are market makers, market analysts, who have decided all of a sudden that Tesla's worth, 5 times as much as they said it was the day before. We know that there's personalities of all kinds on Wall Street that are making decisions based on their own limited knowledge. Each one of them has limited knowledge. So you could say in the aggregate, they have as much knowledge as I do about it, but that individually, this one doesn't, that one doesn't, this one may not. So to the extent that you are zeroing in and becoming an expert on one stock, does that make you potentially able to be a better picker on a day-to-day or in and out, capable of playing the day trade? I found for me, the day trade has always been about knowing how the stock itself plays, how it moves specifically, having nothing to do with the fundamentals of the company, knowing about how the stock moves. But the fundamentals of the company, knowing those helps you for the long term to know this might be a good time to buy more, to sell my house and to have a bigger piece.
Yeah. So we'll have to do a whole nother episode on this because there's a lot you said there. I'll give you long and short. I was up with you up until you started talking about the day trading part of it or the charts and all that. I agree. We can know things that the market isn't aware of, right? Or doesn't know. The problem is to take that, and the original question you had was 6 months before, whatever, like when is market, that you will never ever figure out.
Gotcha.
You can get lucky 6 out of 10 times, and hey, 60 out of 60 to 40, that's a great ratio, right? But you're not gonna be able to predict the timing of it. I fundamentally think that you can get lucky, you can get more than 50-50, but you're never gonna find something that really works other than buy and hold. If I buy and hold and I've done the research and I know what's going on, I know the technology, I truly understand it, and even then I could still be wrong. I could be too early. Peter Thiel is known. He's one of the best investors of all time, but he's also known for being stupid early. Timing is extremely hard. Timing is the casino game in the stock market. If you're trying to time things, you are there to gamble. You're not there to invest. All right. If you take timing out of it, you can win. You know what you can predict? Volatility. Volatility you can predict. And what I mean by that is, again, it's still not, 100% because nothing is. But volatility, when it spikes or when it's really low, will always regress back to the mean. Always. Prices won't. Stock prices will not always regress back to me. They can, but they won't always. And so volatility is a better indicator than timing. Timing is just a fool's errand. If you're trying to time anything, best of luck to you. It's nobody's. I don't think anyone's ever done it well. Warren Buffett's against it, or it talks against it. Peter Thiel talks against it. Elon talks against. I mean, pick all the best investors, the best capital allocators in the world. None of them are ever right about timing.
Okay, let's try to put a wrap on it here. We got the bonds in the pre-market up 11, another 1.1 basis points. We're back to 4.232. That does not make me happy. That's the 10-year. The 2-year is up 1.2 as well. And the 1 month up 0.7 of a basis point. So pretty much all the bonds are in the yield. The yields are up across the board right now. So they're apparent. I don't know. They've been listening to the Fed presidents and whatnot talk this week. Several of them said they were still in favor of a cut in December. So I don't know. We'll see what happens as the week winds on. Oil surged earlier and has stayed right at exactly $70 a barrel on Texas Intermediate. So that's still an awfully good price considering all the different things going around the world. Every one of these different war zones seems to be having things taking place right now, in addition to some new ones. Georgia apparently is, South Korea. I mean, everybody has got some turmoil going on right now. I don't know what's going on. Natural gas up a little, but go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll tell you what's going on is that we have a power vacuum at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what do you think happens when there's a power vacuum? Everything you see going on.
Yeah. And then one of the members of who is in charge of the power vacuum is making all kinds of last minute decisions that seem to be intentionally undermining the next president. This is not good.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're in the most dangerous, call it 60 days right now.
Right now. Okay. Gold down a little bit. But basically flat, silver same, copper same, and Bitcoin also flat, only down 179, sitting at 95.6. So everything is continuing to be flat. The Dow is up 94 in the pre-market, is the only thing that is really, well, okay, NASDAQ's up the same amount, 0.2. So, but that's still fairly flat, very flat day. So the thought would be that it might be like this until Friday when we get the jobs.
Fine by me.
Okay with you? Okay. Any last minute thoughts, observations, things you want to end on?
No, just you know, that I just say it's a word of caution. Don't try to be too cute out there. I've seen some Tesla people recently who I think got burnt really bad by selling out, and now they're upset, and so now they're becoming bears. So it's funny to see this, but you can it's just obvious. And also, I think something that I think the Tesla community should really audit who they listen to. Make sure whoever you listen to actually has money where their mouth is. If not, these are just words and opinions and people who are putting things out there that potentially, in my opinion, most definitely isn't good advice. So just, make sure you know where you're getting your advice from and that those people actually have stake in the game. I'm not saying that you have to see everyone's portfolio or whatever, but you know, you should know who the successful people are. That's all.
Yeah, and I'm only guessing that you only go on the shows of people that you respect their opinion.
Yeah, or just people that, need to make sure that they stay in line, Herbert. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, ooh, a final shot. All right. um, yeah, all right. With that uh, ending, as always, Nick, it's great to have you on. And to all of you out there, it's been, before I go, we've switched up the order. So Brian White comes on later. He'll be on about 7:45 California time. And it's a great show. It's already recorded. So look out for that one in just a bit. But it's been great talking to all of you. Nick,
Likewise.